Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul, and in this Red Gamer Today video, we're going to be discussing and analysing tech news which, as usual, has popped up over the past 24 or so hours. And we're going to start things out with Nvidia and the GeForce GTX 1180 graphics card. As the name would imply, it's similar, at least in theory, to the GTX 16 series of cards. In other words, it's Turing, but lacks ray tracing capabilities, DLSS, and so on. But because it is the 1180, it would be a flagship product. In other words, it would have similar capabilities, at least in terms of traditional performance, to, let's say, the RTX 2080. Our news and rumours concerning the GTX 11 series of cards are nothing new. In fact, back in the day, way before we actually had an official announcement of RTX 20, there was some confusion of whether we would actually just see GTX 10 to GTX 11, but of course that was subsequently cleared up, and Jensen Huang, at least what the rumours say, felt that it just made more sense to go to the 20 series because it seemed like a bigger jump. Whether that's true or not, who the heck knows. Regardless, the 11 series of cards has been long rumoured, but earlier this year there was more fuel added to the fire because we actually saw GFX Bench have an entry which did clearly tell us that there was a benchmark conducted with a card that was being reported as a GTX 1180. But as we all know, benchmark entries can be faked. But now we have an additional source to this, or do we? And that is from HP computers. There have actually been several leaks in the past which have come to us from HP. But this one clearly shows a training manual, and this training manual shows a desktop computer, but it does actually demonstrate that this computer does have a GTX 1180 graphics card. But there are a couple of things which make me very suspicious. The first thing is that why is it not called the GTX 1680? This would be an incredibly baffling move from the perspective of Nvidia. It would mean that you have the RTX 2080, let's just simplify things and forget the 2060, 2080 Ti and all the other cards exist just for a moment, and let's just say you have the 2080 and the 1180. That would make sense in a world where the GTX 16 series of cards does not exist. So what you would have, in fact, is, at least if we can follow the logic train for a moment, the RTX 2080, which would have performance there, the 1180, which let's say would have performance there, and the 1660 Ti, for example, which would have performance there. It just doesn't make sense because people immediately equate 16 as having higher potential performance to, let's say, the 11 series of cards, right? If you're just an average customer, it would lead to a lot of confusion. Another potential, though, is that these cards are designed for OEMs only. And this is not the first time we've seen a particular series of cards, a particular series of products, for a usage scenario which is not necessarily for us as customers. There is a theory that's going around, although I can't find any substantial backing to it, that Nvidia were being requested by OEMs to create a series of GPUs which lacks ray tracing capabilities and DLSS, and you get the idea, so that it can bring down the cost of desktops. Because to a lot of people, let's say that you go to HP's website, or you go to Alienware, whomever, it doesn't really matter. A lot of people don't know what ray tracing is if they're not super technically inclined. All they care about is that, does this system play games at 1440p or 4K or whatever? And so you would call, their sales hotline, or, however you buy it, and then you tell that person, hey, these are the games I'm playing, this is my budget, and then they would do their best, at least in theory, to assist you to purchase that system. So in that instance, I can see the logic, I suppose, of a, cheaper variant of Turing. My biggest problem, though, is that I don't feel that Nvidia would call this the 1180. I feel once again that they would call this the 1680. And secondly, to me, given the context of the system that we're seeing from HP, it would almost feel more like this is a typo. To be really honest with you, that's what it looks like to me. It either looks like it's a typo, or that this product was called the 1180 before Nvidia changed the naming scheme, and Lenovo did similar with its laptops, if you recall. There were a lot of pieces of documentation that were floating around. I think one of the websites actually that reported this way back in the day was Laptop Media. In fact, the chap who runs Laptop Media, the website, actually got in contact with me and actually let me know that no, the reason that he had said that, or rather his website was reporting the Lenovo system, I honestly can't remember what the model number is off the top of my head, but the reason that he had stated originally that the system came with a 1180 is because before his contact at Nvidia had, updated him with the information that no, it's going to be the 20 series for the laptops. Therefore, he just made the assumption that it was going to be 11 series, but then his contact had updated him. So that's what I feel happened here. I feel that the training manual had just said, hey, we're expecting the 11 series, but then, Nvidia pulled a sneaky on everyone and they instead called it the 20 series. So that's my gut feeling. But hey, I could be wrong on this one. And finally, the biggest issue I have with the existence of the GTX 1180 and other cards in the flagship lineup which would lack these capabilities such as ray tracing is that Nvidia have invested so much time and money into creating the technologies. It would basically just really clip the wings of these technologies taking off. And while I do agree that they would be certainly very popular, it would essentially say to a lot of people that Nvidia don't have faith in the products in the long term. I personally really like ray tracing. Nvidia clearly are not the only ones who believe ray tracing is the future. I am firmly a believer that Navi will have some ray tracing capabilities. I'm also a firm believer that Intel will also embrace ray tracing. It's no secret that Sony and Microsoft are working on next generation hardware. Phil Spencer himself took to the stage and confirmed that not only would there be one new Xbox device, but they were working on a, quote, family of new Xbox systems. Later on, we heard from the website Windows Central that there would be at least 2 SKUs in the Xbox Scarlet, which by the way is the code name for the project, family. The first is Anaconda, the second is Lockhart, with Anaconda being the more powerful of the 2 devices. It uses a Zen 2 based processor, 8 cores, 16 threads, 16 gigabytes of memory, which is actually quite a lot for a console, and a Navi based GPU. The Navi based GPU, by the way, is 12 T-flops, and it's a custom type of design. And you also can't do a T-flop for T-flop comparison. For example, looking at the 6 T-flops of the Xbox One X and comparing it to the GPU inside of Anaconda and being like, oh, well, it's twice as powerful. Obviously, Navi being more efficient could mean that we have a significant architectural advantage with Navi, plus of course with the more powerful CPU, combined with rumours that the next generation Xboxes will be capable of ray tracing, and indeed there could be an awful lot of performance that Microsoft can squeeze out of its system. Putting the technical specs of the console to the side for a moment though, and there is a couple of rather fascinating rumours surrounding Microsoft's plans for the next generation. They come from the French publication Jus Video. I've most likely butchered the name, but I'll put a link to their content, of course, in the video description. The first thing is that Microsoft will allegedly be making an announcement for the next generation Xbox systems at E3 this year. Not only will they be doing that, but it's, well, confirmed by these rumours that we will be seeing a new Halo Infinite, as a launch title for the next generation Xbox consoles. As rumours go, this one's not too far out there, because Phil Spencer along with Microsoft themselves have said that they are going to make this year's E3, 2019's E3, one of the biggest that they've ever hosted. And combine that with the fact that they know that the weakness of this generation of Xbox consoles has been exclusive titles. So for them to say, well, we're not only going to be announcing some of the key details about the system, I don't think they're going to be launching it at E3 or anything like that, but for them to say, hey, our target release date is X, and here are the titles that we're planning to launch the system with, there's not that much more they have to do to get people who are already interested in Xbox excited and say, look, our system's going to be launching with Halo Infinite, and show off some really interesting gameplay. And that's the key, of course. People would like to see a great multiplayer component with Halo. But for me, I've just always been a sucker for the campaign of Halo. I know it sounds silly, but the very first time I saw a trailer way back in the day of Halo running on the original Xbox, I was like, I need to play this game. I need to. And I just didn't have the cash for it, to be honest. I just could not justify buying an Xbox at the time because I was a PC gamer and I had a PlayStation 2. So it was a little later I actually picked up an Xbox when Halo 2 broke me. And I just ended up picking up an Xbox to play the damn thing because it just looked so amazing, and I just love the Halo campaign and the music in it and everything else. I really want to see what Microsoft do with the next Halo. And we all know that Gears, the next generation of Gears, is a certainty. We know Forza and so on and so on. But there are also so many studios that Microsoft have snagged, such as Ninja Theory. To me, it's a certainty that we're going to be seeing some really impressive titles from Microsoft, which are going to be exclusive, and I'll get to that in just a second of why I'm saying exclusive in such a way, to their system. And, you know, it's one of those situations where you can imagine that this E3 could certainly belong to Microsoft, because Sony are not exactly going to be present and certainly not going to be announcing the PlayStation 5 at the same time as Microsoft's and a next generation console. It's going to be interesting, though, in the grand scheme of things, how things play out between the two companies, especially given Microsoft are offering so much budget to developers to create titles. Adding fuel to the fire is the fact that Windows Central actually backs up several points regarding Jules Video and the appearance of a next generation Xbox at E3, or at least the announcement of the system. And this is added to because Nintendo and the Switch will allegedly be getting streaming capabilities for Xbox titles. Now, there are actually two sources for this. One being Jules Video, who have given information slightly later than Direct Feed Games. And they are telling us that we will see over 100 Xbox titles be streamable on the Nintendo Switch, including Ori on the Blind Forest. Now, not only will you have all of these capabilities, but you will also have the Xbox app. This means that you will have essentially the ability to speak to people on Xbox Live via your Nintendo Switch. Now, you have to remember that Microsoft are clearly pushing towards games as a service, the ability for users to stream games from the cloud. And in their mind, they want to reach as many users as possible. That isn't to say that they're going to stop development on the Xbox. After all, the fact that Anaconda exists is clearly a testament to their desire to remain in the hardware market. But it also would be silly of them when you have, let's say, Amazon and Google, who are clearly pursuing cloud-based streaming of games, to then just be like, you know what, we're just going to remain as a hardware manufacturer. We've already seen them pledge to release exclusive titles on the PC, so we're going to see games like Halo and Gears of War have a basically simultaneous release on Windows for your PC. So for them to then say to Nintendo, hey, you have a rather large install base, would you like us to put an app for the Nintendo Switch which allows users to stream Xbox games onto your system? It just makes sense. It adds a lot of value for the Nintendo side of the equation, because obviously Nintendo get access to more games, but for Microsoft it means that they are getting whatever your monthly fee is for that service. It's going to be interesting to see how gaming evolves over the next generation. Clearly internet speeds are getting much faster, and we are almost at the point where streaming can become more widely adopted. There are still certain regions though where streaming would be not possible in the UK and the United States, but I imagine by the mid to / end point of the next console generation, streaming is going to be pretty much a standard. It's quite interesting because I actually have a lot of friends who were totally adverse to the idea of digitally downloading console games. And that's one of the reasons why a couple of them did not buy the original Xbox One when it launched. They said, no, it's clear that Microsoft are pushing towards streaming, and they just got really turned off by the announcements at launch E3. And despite the fact that Microsoft rolled back a lot of changes, they'd already put in their pre-orders for the PlayStation 4. Well, you know how it goes. But now, it's weird because a lot of people just buy the the discs digitally. And I actually know people who bought, let's say, Kingdom Hearts on the Xbox digitally, even though it's more expensive than if you were to order a physical copy. And their reasoning is quite simple. They were just like, you know what? I just want to get the game. I don't want to deal with the fact that it could get lost in the mail. I don't have time right now to go to the store because of where I'm working and, you know, blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to download the game digitally. It'll be ready on day one. They also cited the other benefits of digital as well, such as always being able to have access to your games. For example, if you go around a friend's house, you don't need to worry about bringing discs. You don't need to worry about the discs being damaged, and so on and so on. So it's quite interesting to me that people have changed their opinions so fast over the past couple of years alone. So I do believe that Microsoft pushing towards a streaming service certainly makes a lot of sense, even though from a personal standpoint, I still have a soft place in my heart for physical media when it comes to consoles. But then let's also be honest. Some games are basically broken at launch with the standard retail disc. That's not to say you can't play it, it's just that you have major performance issues and so on. So quite frequently you will have a massive day one patch. And there's something to be said about old systems, like even Xbox 360 when it launched back in like 2005. You know, sure, they would sometimes be a day one patch, especially early on in the system's life. The patches were tiny. But generally speaking, the game was pretty much as, you know, good to go as you could expect. There were glitches and so on which would be patched, but generally speaking, it's not like today where like a day one patch is not like, oh, it's 20 megs or, you know, 100 megabytes. No. It's 20 gigabytes or 30 gigabytes. It's just, you know, you install the disk and then you basically have to reinstall the entire game again because of the patch. It's kind of crazy. So I definitely feel that digital will be the future, and I think most people know that anyway. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these systems evolve over the next couple of years. Anyway, with all of that said, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Normal stuff if you have, like, share, comment, subscribe. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.